Welcome to the next video. Before I begin, I want to thank Steve Sable for having me as a guest on the Don't Quill the Messenger podcast. Though I was kind of nervous, I had a good time talking about codes I've posted in the videos and ideas Steve and I think may be part of the Shakespeare mystery. If you'd like to hear it, I put the link to the interview in the description below. In this video, I'm going to go over some things I think are hints that Edward de Vere, Francis Bacon, and the Rosicrucians were involved with the works of William Shakespeare. See what you make of them. Something this group does is encode information right to left, or in reverse. We're looking at the To the Reader poem on the opening page of the first folio, and other researchers have already figured out that if you count right to left from the end of the poem, ever, a short form of Edward Vere and an anagram of Vere, is the 17th word, the same number as de Vere's Earl number. If you've been following these videos, you know I learned from Alexander Waugh's videos that there were some who referred to Edward de Vere as the 4th T, or 4T, and the number we use to identify de Vere is 1740, which we think is a combination of his Earl number and whatever 40 or 4T means. Counting right to left, 40 words from E. Vere, Shakespeare is word 57. 57 is equal to 17 plus 40. Some of us believe this word count was done with intent as a clue that Edward de Vere, or 1740, was Shakespeare. Across from the poem is the most famous image of William Shakespeare, the Droeshout portrait. I've explained this in a couple previous videos, but I need to go over it again real quick because there's more here than I initially presented. William Shakespeare's collar and buttons are in the shape of a spade. The collar is bent forward just like the blade of a shovel or spade when it's turned over. The phrase calling a spade means to tell the truth about something. It's been around for centuries and was used during the time of Shakespeare. Hidden within this Shakespeare spade, we find a number. On the collar or blade of the spade are 6 horizontal pointed lines, 2 on the left and 4 on the right. In the middle, beneath the face of Shakespeare, are 2 vertical rectangular lines making 2 ones, or an 11. 6 horizontal pointed lines plus the vertical rectangular lines that make an 11 add up to 17. The collar or blade has a wide highlight around it, suggesting the shape of a letter D, and below the collar or handle are a total of 14 buttons. D has a gematria value of 4, and 14 is equivalent to the letter O. Altogether, this spade shape made by the collar and buttons is comprised of 17 lines, a letter D, and 14 buttons, or 1740. If we're calling a spade, then it looks like the truth about William Shakespeare is that he's 1740 or 1740. The right to left word count from the end of the poem implies the same. Again, Shakespeare is word 57 or 17 and 40. People have commented on how strange the doublet Shakespeare's wearing looks. Something I noticed is that the pattern on the left side of the doublet looks like a D and on the right side an R and maybe a C. Here's the embroidery. That looks to me like a stylized letter D and an R. Maybe a C is being hinted at in the right side curve of the R, making a combination single letter RC, but the engraver, Martin Droeshout, was Flemish, and in Dutch, Rosicrucians is a single word, I think pronounced Rosicrucians, similar to the German Rosenkreuz. D is a Latin abbreviation for Deus, meaning God. R, or possibly RC, stands for Rosicrucians. Since 1740 is a number we identify with Edward de Vere, are we seeing the message God, de Vere, and Rosicrucians, similar to God, de Vere, and Gold Rosicrucians, which is found 3 times on the cover of the sonnets? Now I want to focus on the collar because it stands out and I think there's more going on here with the lines. Years ago, I saw a video by William J. Ray talking about the 2 pointed lines on the left and 4 on the right. He explained that in French, 2 is pronounced de, and in German, 4 is Vere. De Vere sounds like the name De Vere. However, if the numbers from the pointed lines are a play on the name De Vere, it still leaves the 2 rectangular lines in the middle, which I don't recall Ray addressing. I've already shown how these 2 lines can be read as an 11. With the curved lines above and below, they also look similar to a Gemini symbol, which stands for twin. If the 2 and 4 lines are meant to be read as De Vere, and the 2 lines in the middle can be seen as a Gemini symbol, then are we being told that Edward de Vere is a twin of William Shakespeare, or that he's a twin of someone else? If it's the latter, then who is it? Well, there's another way the lines in the collar can be read. Earlier, we counted the lines in the middle as an 11, but they're also simply 2 ones, similar to a Roman numeral 2. Now here's the thing. There are a couple different types of lines in the collar. 6 are horizontal pointed lines, 2 on the left and 4 on the right. 6 is the gematria equivalent of the letter F. And in the middle, there are 2 vertical rectangular lines. The gematria equivalent of 2 is the letter B. 6 pointed lines and 2 rectangular lines are equal to the letters FB, initials for Francis Bacon. Read one way, we get De Vere with a symbol for twin. Read another way, and we get the letters FB. There are different ways that the lines can be counted, but I think it's a strange coincidence that the leading contenders for the name William Shakespeare are Edward de Vere and Francis Bacon, and by counting the lines in Shakespeare's collar, we can find hints to both of their names. Looking again at the To the Reader poem, it opens with an acrostic spelling two, T-W-O. Even though I think the word count I showed earlier was done by design, I'm not sure if this is one of the clues, but an idea I have is, replace the acrostic 2 with the actual number for 2. Next, apply gematria. The value of 2 is equivalent to the letter B. So if we replace the 2 acrostic with the letter B, it could mean that the poem's last 2 capitalized letters, which are the only capitalized letters on the first line, could be read right to left as FB. This could mean that, starting from the end of the poem, right to left, Vere is word 17. Count 40 more words, and Shakespeare is word 57, or 17 plus 40. And if we replace the 2 acrostic with the letter equivalent of the number 2, the last capital letters of the poem are FB, initials for Francis Bacon, the same initials found in the collar. Whether that's legit or not, 2 and Bacon turn up together somewhere else. For code researchers, page 2 of the Tempest is one of the most famous in Shakespeare because of what Petter Amundsen shows on it in his videos Sweet Swan of Avon and 7 Steps to Mercy. It's also well known by code researchers that when gematria is applied to the name Francis Bacon, the letters Francis add up to 67 and Bacon adds up to 33. In his videos, Petter Amundsen shows how, on page 2 of the Tempest, line 33 from the top of the page falls in between an acrostic spelling F. Bacon. Again, 33 is the numerical equivalent of the name Bacon. Several lines above this, Petter discovered an acrostic spelling Arcadia followed by the line, "Lie there my art." More on that later. Alright, now I don't know if Petter Amundsen or another Baconian has figured this out. If they have, great, but I haven't seen anyone explain this before. Instead of counting from the start of the page, count backwards from the end of it, beginning from the last line of page 2 with the catchword good, and for Francis Bacon, God was only good, To the top of the column, there are 67 lines. Then go to the left column, counting upwards, and the Bacon acrostic begins on line 33. Again, the gematria value of the name Francis is equal to 67, and Bacon is equal to 33. So I'm suggesting that the page may have been typeset with the numbers equal to the name Francis Bacon in mind. One other thing Petter Amundsen points out is that in the second column across from the Bacon acrostic is another spelling 2, TWO. The W in 2 is printed in lower case, and I wonder if that's a hint to focus on the large letters. If we apply gematria to them, T is equal to 19 and O is equal to 14, adding up to 33, the same value as the name Bacon, which again is spelled out in the first column directly across from the 2 acrostic. This could be letting us know that Bacon and 2 are the same. Now it's after this 2 acrostic where I think references to Edward de Vere begin. Starting with 2, there's a repeating sequence of 17 lines that eventually leads to the Arcadia message. 17 lines from 2 is an acrostic spelling twin, T-W-I-N. From the top of the page, the T in twin is on line 17 and is the 4th T along the margin. That's twin spelled on line 17 with the 4th T, or 17-4T twin. Earlier we saw what looks like a symbol for twin and numbers pronounced de Vere inside Shakespeare's collar. If 2 stands for Francis Bacon, is his twin Edward de Vere. 17 is Oxford's Earl number, but the gematria value of 17 is also equal to the letter R, the first letter in Rose or Rosie. There's a 17-line connection between the 2 and twin acrostics. If you twin a 2, you get 22, also known as twice 11, which is something I believe has to do with the Rosicrucians. I don't know if this is significant, but reading the words of the play, the last word that appears across from both 2 and twin is brother. Are these typesettings a hint at a Rosicrucian or twice 11 connection between Edward de Vere and Francis Bacon? Alright, in between the 2 and twin acrostics is a string of characters that are mostly capital letters, and I think these capital letters may conceal a message. I've cleared everything away to make it easier to see. Reading upwards from 2 are the letters IA. As a Latin abbreviation, IA stands for inter alia, meaning among other things. However, in the list of classical abbreviations, I read that IA stands for iam, which is Latin for at some point previous, now, or already. Since iam is spelled IAM, I'm wondering if its abbreviation IA is being used here for I am, meaning God. Continuing upwards are letters spelling T, 2T, and another T. A T, 2 T's, and another T add up to 4 T's. Above that is a lowercase h, then a parenthesis, which we ignore because we're only focusing on the capital letters. Then lastly, before the word twin, are 2 A's. These could represent the AA headpieces found in the Folio and other Shakespeare works, and which some associate with the Rosicrucians. So, reading upwards from 2 to twin, do these capitalized letters stand for the message God, de Vere, and Rosicrucians? Alright, the T in twin was on the 17th line and was the 4th T from the top of the second column. Within the repeating sequence of 17 lines, this is the beginning of what's going to be 3 consecutive 17-4T typesettings. We can't count any further up in the second column, so we go over to the first column and start counting upwards, 17 lines to here. To an acrostic spelling F-O-W-R-E, and on the line above it, T. 17-4T. From that letter T, we keep counting. 17 lines later are letters spelling F-O-R-T. That's 3 17-4Ts in a row, followed by the 2 and twin acrostics. Notice how the F in that third 1740 is also the same letter F that begins the F Bacon acrostic shown by Petter Amundsen. Alright, from the third 1740 we count 17 lines one more time and arrive to where all this has been leading, to the beginning of the Arcadia acrostic discovered by Amundsen. The acrostic begins with the letter A followed by an O and a T. As Petter explains, the letter O represents the shape of a rose and a T is a cross, so he swaps the OT with the letters RC. I believe he's right because I've also found examples of OT being used for rose and cross. To make it easier to read, I've replaced the OT with RC and removed the extraneous information. The acrostic reads Arcadia, ending with the line, "Lie there, my art." In myth, Arcadia is a utopia or paradise and has been an inspiration for artists for centuries. As Petter explains, Arcadia was also the name given to certain Canadian provinces, Oak Island among them, where it's believed by some that the works of William Shakespeare were buried. You may have seen or heard of the television show Curse of Oak Island, where they've been searching for years. The Arcadia message is 17 lines from the third 1740, which is also part of the F. Bacon acrostic. So whose art lies in Arcadia? 1740 or Francis Bacon? Or is it both? The answer might be found here. Notice there's a colon after the words, "Lie there, my art." I realize that if we start counting from here, 17 words later is the word virtue. In French, virtue is pronounced vertu, which can be read right to left as tu ver. In French, tu is de, so if we read these syllables right to left as tu ver or de ver, maybe this word is hinting at the name de Vere. After those three 1740 typesettings, and because this is the 17th word following the colon, are we being told that the person whose art lies in Arcadia is Vere too, alluding to de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford? Before virtue is the word very. Could the two VERs in very virtue also imply to Vere, meaning de Vere? And another hint that the art in Arcadia is Edward de Vere's might be that the words, "Lie there, my art," are printed from the top of the column on line 2-4, again implying de Vere. Now recall earlier in the second column when I pointed out the 17 lines from 2 to twin, and how the capital letters along the margin from the lines in between these words might be an acrostic message, which would mean that every line here is used. This got me thinking that the lines below the Arcadia message might also meant to be read. If they are, then every line would be part of a message here as well, just like in column 2. Right beneath these letters is the F. Bacon acrostic. I'm not exactly sure what the W would be an abbreviation for, so maybe we're supposed to read the entire word. NB is the Latin abbreviation for nota bene, meaning note well. Reading upwards, could the message be F. Bacon, which, note well, is TT? We believe Edward de Vere is 4T, so could this be letting us know that 2T, the initials we sometimes find, like in the sonnets, stand for Francis Bacon? If you have another suggestion for this, or for what the W might mean, please let me know in the comments. One last thing I'll point out here is, from the start of the Arcadia message to the end of the name Bacon is 22 lines, and directly opposite in the second column, there are also 22 lines from the end of the words to twin. Like I mentioned earlier, I think twice 11 is something that has to do with the Rosicrucians, more specifically light, and I'll talk more about that in a future video. Many code researchers, particularly Baconians, accept the Bacon and Arcadia acrostics shown by Petter Amundsen as legitimate. Then what about everything I just went over? I explained how, counting from the end of the page, Bacon's name appears after 67 lines, then 33, and how there are acrostics every 17 lines, a number we identify with either Oxford's Earl number or the letter R in rows. 17 lines from 2, I found the word twin, followed by 3 17/4-Ts, then another 17 lines to Arcadia. It looks to me like the Bacon, Arcadia, and 2 acrostics, Amundsen points out, are part of a larger set of messages that are printed along 22 lines in both columns, one that reads Francis Bacon is 2T, and the other God de Vere and Rosicrucians. If I had to guess, I would say the page was typeset with numbers in mind that indicate Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, and the Rosicrucians. The last item I want to look at is something from Alexander Waugh's videos, Ben Jonson's Discoveries Discovered. In his work entitled Timber, Ben Jonson compares 16 writers to a man named Lord Verulam, who Waugh is able to identify as Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. I noticed that, except for in a couple places, the names on the list appear to be printed in the order of the year these men passed away. I don't know why the names of Eliot and Gardner are out of order. Maybe there's some kind of numerical game going on here. But if we're going to go by the year they died, Thomas Egerton's name should appear after the Earl of Essex, and Francis Bacon's name should be printed a few places after, following Henry Savile. Instead, Thomas Egerton and Francis Bacon appear at the end of the list. I don't know if this is anything, but Thomas Egerton's year of death was 1617, and his year of birth was 1540. I know I should have the year 1540 on the left side of 1617, but what I want to point out is that the numbers in the tens place of those years happen to be 17 and 40, Oxford's number. Was the order changed so that the number 1740 could be found before Bacon's name? Whatever the case, Jonson tells us that Bacon, referred to in the text as Lord St. Alban, is the successor to Verulam, or, as Waugh points out, Edward de Vere. I notice that the word successor ends with a parenthesis, but doesn't begin with one. There is a closed parenthesis right before it because the preceding words are bracketed. As far as I can tell, the parenthesis shouldn't be there, and I wonder if that's a hint to take a closer look. I notice that if you count the characters before the word successor, they total 40. I don't have a facsimile, so I don't know if we're looking at the entire page, but from the copy I found, there appears to be a break after the last line. Counting upwards from the end of it, there are 17 lines before the line with successor on it, and then on that line there are 40 characters before the word appears. Are these typesettings clues letting us know that, as the successor to Lord Verulam, Francis Bacon was following 1740, or Edward de Vere? I believe Edward de Vere wrote under the pseudonym William Shakespeare, and if I have to give that name to any one person, it's him. But I also think that Francis Bacon contributed something to the work, succeeding Edward de Vere in some way, and was possibly responsible for getting any unfinished works completed after de Vere passed. People who know a lot more about Shakespeare than I do suggest that other writers may have lent a hand. Decide for yourself what I pointed out in this video is legitimate, and if you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. Thanks again to Steve Sable and the Don't Quill the Messenger podcast, the work of Peter Amundsen, to Alexander Waugh, Chris Jonson, Ron Raffel, John Foss, and Patrick Jennings, and to you for watching.